I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Tuesday, September the 14th, brought to you in part by Brommagen Commodities out of Kentucky. That's my friend Candy Sullivan there, and she can fix you up with an account. It doesn't cost anything to get an account set up. Of course, you have to put some money in there, but you want to sure call in there and get something set up. That way, if spur of the moment you want to get some of your crops or your cattle hedged, whatever you want to do. Maybe you have a hunch to play the market one way or the other. You know, if you've got an account set up and you see smoke coming from a packing plant or something, you could just get on the phone right then and short that board really fast and maybe take advantage of that. But get a hold of Candy Sullivan there at BrommagenCommodities.com. And always remember, when you start fooling around with commodities, you can and will lose money. Fire scare. And a lot of us had deja vu to start the week out here on Monday morning. I don't know about you guys, but the texts started coming in the middle of the night and early in the morning because they had a late Sunday night fire at the JBS facility in Grand Island, Nebraska. That a lot of us were just in shock when we heard that, especially whenever you see pictures of ladder trucks and things like that going to work and big pillars of smoke coming out. But it turned out not to be as bad as what we might have feared. We had reports coming in all day. How long are they going to be shut down? How bad was it? Well, it appears that most of the damage happened in the rendering facility where they were doing some construction. And you know, a plant itself doesn't have a lot of fuel for fire, but when they're in there doing construction and things like that, you have the ability for something like that to happen. And a lot of times whenever you see fires in facilities like that, it is during some sort of construction, and that's what happened. But the core plant, the processing facility, pretty much come through it unscathed. And we were hearing reports you know, during the late morning and things that were coming out saying that they expected to be down 2 or 3 days, you know, at the most, and would sure get going again this week. And so that let everybody kind of breathe out a sigh of relief. And then the board kind of started bouncing back from the initial big drops, and then your board ended up down, but it may not have been you know, any better than that if we hadn't had the plant fire, because it's been down like that here for the last couple of weeks, and we've been having a big sell-off, and your board is oversold technically. If you talk to the people that look at the charts, you know, it sure looks like it's oversold, but just not much inspiration to get back in on the long side of the board. We've seen the CFTC reports come out and say your managed money has been you know, bailing out of your longs and jumping onto your short positions, and you really can't blame them whenever the industry itself cannot gain you know, much ground and can't get any leverage on the fat cattle side. And you know, we had these big prices out there way up in the 130s for fat cattle, into the 140s, you know, come this next spring. But I think, you know, in our heart of hearts, we knew that we probably were never going to see that, and we never saw majors given 130, and now we're drifting back on the downside of that. So you're not likely to see you know, much interest on the long side of the board until we can show, either through numbers of continued decreasing of our supplies, which we do have that, but it's just not enough. We've got to show them that we can consistently gain ground in the fat cattle market, and we just can't as an industry do that. And we've been hearing a lot of reports, which you know, I can't really verify any of them, but I've heard many individuals that I get information from saying that they're hearing a lot of packer propaganda out there, and you don't normally hear that. Normally you don't hear you know, you think that the packers are pretty much oblivious to what you know, USDA is saying about them, or what even President Magoo's saying about them. You know, people like me, other people that are analyzing the markets, you don't hear anything much from them. It's almost like they're just turning a blind eye to that, and they don't pay any attention at all. Well, in the late last week, over the weekend, and so far this week, we continue to hear stories that the packers are pushing, saying, you know, you guys think the market's that bad. It's really not that bad. You know, we could sure make it a whole lot worse than that, you know. and that is kind of scary, but I would really doubt that they would come out and say those kind of things and then follow through with them. If they wanted to take the market down, they would take the market down. And the last couple of weeks, we've really seen some charity type bids where they're coming in and maybe, especially in the Southern Plains, where the Southern Plains has zero leverage, and they got plenty of captive supplies. They got plenty of people wanting to grid cattle. They don't really have to keep the market steady or give that extra dollar like they did on the 124 we saw here a couple of weeks ago. And so I would really doubt that they would follow through with that, but there must be some kind of a ploy, because they are masters at using mind games, whether it's through manipulating the market or convincing all your cattle sellers that they don't need any cattle ever, whatever they do. But they are master negotiators at that, and we'll just have to kind of watch and see what happens as we go forward. But let's look at the board to open the week. And this, it was worse to start off the day because we had the big fears of the fire scare. But then come back a little bit and down about like what we've been used to seeing here the last couple of weeks. But October live cattle futures down $1.15 on Monday at 122.27. December was down $1.07 at 127.15. All your back months were down too, from 67 cents to $1.60. Feeder cattle, of course, they were the loftiest. That we've been hanging up there pretty high, and so we've been seeing bigger losses from them, and we indeed saw more losses like that to start the week out. But they were a long ways from your fat cattle trade, which would have been affected by that plant being closed for a significant amount of time. But September feeder cattle down 205 at 152.20. October down 227 at 155.45. Your back months were all down big, also from $1.97 to 232. Let's look at your weighted average on last week's negotiated fed cattle trade. What little there was out of your 5-area feeding region, only 58,600 head. That was a sprinkle more than the holiday week of 50,500 head, and compared to a year ago, which was 69,700 head. But your live sales of steers and heifers last week ranged from 123 to 127. Weighted average on live steers was 124.79, and that was 82 cents lower than the previous week. Your one price in the Southern Plains was really 123, and then we saw kind of a range from 124, 5, 6, and 7 in the Northern Plains, where they're tighter on supplies and they've got more of the better, higher quality grading cattle that the packers are really after. And you got help from your regionals in the Northern Plains, which means everything and makes all the difference in the world. Your dress sales steers and heifers ranged from 194 to 203 last week, with a weighted average dress steer price of $200.82, which was down 97 cents compared to the previous week. We thought it might be more than that down, but we just didn't have the stick out deals like we did the previous week, getting up into 205, 6, and 7. Didn't see anything like that, but enough of the 203 to kind of prop things up. Nationwide negotiated cash sales 71,500 head, and 29% of those for the 15 to 30 day delivery, which is not as bad as it is a lot of weeks. But I keep telling you guys, the way that the packers are going to get around anything that we try to get done as far as mandating a minimum negotiated trade is through negotiated grid. They don't have to tweak a whole lot, and they can turn a lot of those grid sales in as negotiated grid. And for the second week in a row, we've had big turn-ins of negotiated grid sales from your packers. It was 34,400 head last week compared to the same week a year ago, which was 16,700 head. So just in the last several weeks, just a dramatic increase in the number of cattle that are turned in negotiated grid, and a lot of those cattle were probably formula cattle that they could just tweak a little bit as far as the mandatory price reporting, turn those in as negotiated grid. And you think, well, what are those cattle bringing? About 15,000 of your live FOB negotiated grid, And to me, and a straight up negotiated grid would always be dressed, but 15,000 of them were live FOB with a base price of 124. So that is right along with your market there, and it's likely just some better cattle are going to have a few more CABs and things like that on them. But we just don't hear about the negotiations on the negotiated grid. It's not reported in your ag radio stations. It's not reported freely, around the circuit saying, what are you getting bid, what are you asking? And so it doesn't help in your negotiation, especially from your smaller feeders that really need help with that. Now, on dressed negotiated grid, about 19,000 of those, they had a huge range in price, base price from 190 to 209. I'm not sure who's negotiating a 190 whenever your cash dressed price is over $2, but 190 to 209 with a weighted average that was just lower than what your negotiated dressed cash was of $200.45 on a weighted average of the base price negotiated grid. Box beef cutout values on Monday were lower again, not as dramatic as they were late last week, but choice cuts $325.93 down $1.29. Selects $290.216 down $121. Talk about what else is going on. At 9 o'clock here on Tuesday morning, Central Time, 9 o'clock Central, be earlier than that, of course, out west. Western Video Market's going to have their big sale from the historic Haythorne Land and Cattle Company near Ogallala, Nebraska. You want to tune into that sale either on WVMCattle.com or on DVAuction.com, and you can view and bid that sale right there. They got 20,000 head of cattle and sheep on offer. A lot of the cattle that they have on offer are featured, and you know how Western does it. They go through reputable auction markets, and I really like the way they do that. It keeps your guys out in the country from stepping on each other's toes. If there's a customer out there that they've been doing business with in their brick and mortar sale, but they got big long strings of cattle that they'd like to sell direct, then they get those cattle, and you don't get pickups running into each other trying to get commission on cattle out in the country. But they're featuring many of the cattle from their partner auctions across Nebraska and the whole Midwest. And that's one reason they come out to Ogallala there to have that sale, to be closer to a lot of those customers and a lot of their partner auctions home base right there. But 9 o'clock Central Time, right here on DV Auction or WVMCattle.com to watch the Haythorne Land and Cattle Company Ranch with Western Video Market. How about your feeder cattle market on Monday to start the week? Your real-time index on DV Auction ended the day at 153 1/4, down another 83 cents, and your cash feeder market is backing up a little bit every day, has been, not as dramatically as your board is. So right now, real-time index is running about $1 premium to what your spot September feeder cattle contract is. Now, all summer long your spot feeder cattle futures were running ahead of what your index cash was, but now they've kind of flip-flopped. But it is coming down quite a bit, mostly because of big calves. But like I'm going to tell you in just a minute, your big yearling feeders that have compensatory gain and really have the go to them, they're selling almost as good in a lot of places as they have been any time this summer or this fall so far. But your big sales to start the week out: Oklahoma City, Oklahoma National Stockyards, 8,750 head of cattle, and they didn't have a sale last week, of course, so their trend compared to 2 weeks ago, and I figured it'd be lower, but feeder cattle in Oklahoma City, $5 to $8 lower than 2 weeks ago, and it's been lower all along. Steer calves $8 to $10 lower. Heifer calves steady to $3 lower, so they're getting back in line from being off for 2 weeks there. Joplin Regional Stockyards, 6,100 head. They didn't have a sale last Monday, so 2 weeks ago trend there, and their steers were steady to $4 lower. The heifers that had a good comparison were mostly steady right there. We've got another bunch of storms coming in the Gulf of Mexico. We're expecting some big rains from that tropical storm Nicholas that's coming to land as we speak right now. and it's going to be a big rainmaker. South Texas, down into Louisiana like they need it, but it'll be kind of rolling and coming up and bringing some much needed moisture in some cases to parts of east and even central Texas there, and going up into your southeast there a little bit. But let's look at some quotes from around the circuit on Monday. How about a market I don't know that we've talked about before, but my friend Dwayne Penny, who's a stud horse right there, he used to sort my cattle for me. He used to be at St. Joe Stockyards before they closed. He's been a long-time commission firm, and he's moved to Tina Livestock Sales in Tina, Missouri. Had a customer, the Brum family, come in on Monday, sold 113 head, 775-pound steers at $164.85. That's a heck of a quote. How about some Pee-wee calves? And I keep telling you guys, if you want some strings of these Pee-wee calves, they got them in the Northern Plains. Out there in western South Dakota and places like that, they've got them. These ranch calves are coming early, and they're light because those guys need to move them off the pastures. But Faith, South Dakota right there, look at these long strings of Pee-wee calves, all weighing under 500 pounds. There's a couple deals of heifers in there. But the stick-out deal to me was 124 head of 475-pound ranch steer calves at $212.50. I'll tell you where they got cheap feed, and that's out in the eastern corn belt. Anytime you start seeing sales that are towards the eastern corn belt, you see your farmer feeders and your smaller independents really coming after cattle because they have got the corn out there. That's the best place that we've had it this harvest year. A lot of guys have cut silage out there, and they're making a whole lot more of it than what they thought. When I was up in Minnesota the other day, we was at that Dorn farm there, and he had just got done cutting his silage, and he could not believe what it made because they had been really dry there late in that growing season too. But look at Tama Livestock Auction in Tama, Iowa. They're famous for their fat cattle sales, but they have good feeder cattle specials too. 74 head, 755-pound steers, bring 171.25. But the best quote that I saw anywhere, and your Zach Tran top quote for the day, come out of Callaway Livestock Center, Kingdom City, Missouri, Jack Harrison and company there, 60 head, 844-pound steers, bring 162.75. That's nearly $10 higher than your index. And that's your feeder flash for Tuesday.